Carving 101 today is from Base Camp at Dust Devil Mining Company, the famed Dust Devil Mining Company outside of Plush, Oregon. Okay, now I'm going to move over to the final sand, which should be 3000 grit. Now, 3000 grit's usually considered a pre-polish, so you want to spend plenty of time on this wheel in order to get the best results in a polishing stage. You want to make sure everything has actually a nice shine to it by the time you finish with this wheel, and then polishing just works so much faster. You can see it's starting to take on a nice little shine to it. Like I say, this is a stage that you want to make sure there's no grind lines or anything visible. It should actually have kind of a really slightly frosted polish to it, but no grind lines of anything visible. If they are, you need to work them out. So you may want to work this stage with Optivisor or magnification. Shop I have at home, I've got a little air hose, and you get these stones wet and then you can't see it, and you're sitting here trying to dry it off with a towel, and the towel's a little bit wet. If you just hit it with an air hose, you can blow the water off of it real quick and speeds things up a little bit in terms of inspection. These genies are good pieces of equipment, but the one thing I don't really care for is this sometimes will vibrate back and forth. You want to make sure it's always giving you a good water lubrication. One of the things that you have to watch for in sunstone is the growth lines of the crystal, and sometimes if you're parallel to those growth lines, you can actually end up with little tidbits that pull away. So if you go across that grain, sometimes you can prevent that. So there's a little area where I've rounded it that I'm experiencing a problem when I'm parallel to it, turning it the other direction, they completely go away. It's a little easier to sand off. This particular stone I probably only lost about 25% to 30%, primarily because it was a good preform to begin with. If I take a stone like this right here, you can see it's got a nice flat. I won't lose a whole lot getting the flat real nice where you can look into it as a window. But if I were to make this a pear shape, you're going to lose a significant portion of it. So doing a stone like this, you're probably going to end up with about 50% return, which is still not bad. This last step is one that there is one inherent problem. These genies are excellent pieces of equipment, but one of the inherent problems that you run into with the genie in this last stage, which this is a 14,000 grit, is contamination. Contamination is probably the #1 culprit in people not getting a good polish on their gemstones. So I always recommend a completely separate polishing unit just for polish. The very best way to polish is you can take this end wheel off and you'll get to the threads. These are actually made to go on a genie. You're better off putting one of these on the genie that's a pretty thick felt buff, and take a little bit of serum oxide powder and a spray bottle. And what I like to do is mix just a little bit of the serum oxide in with the solution itself, or you can mix in a little container, kind of a pasty amount of it. It looks a little bit like toothpaste, just pretty thick consistency, and you take just a little bit as the wheel is rotating around, and you want to charge the wheel. And that way you're pretty much contaminant free. You're not spraying up little bits and pieces on the 14,000 grit wheel. But we've gone through the magic of television. The problem with this one is if you've ground on these two previous sanding stages, you've got all these little tiny particles, and the way this is designed, it shoots up a little spray of water. Now you're shooting those up onto the 14,000 grit wheel, and that little particle, as it drags across, could end up giving you a scratch. So I always recommend people change the water out, but we're going to see how this works because I've started with fresh water to begin with. It'll actually give us pretty good results for base camp, which is not a bad thing. In a lapidary shop, I always recommend people be a whole lot more careful with cross-contamination. When you're actually able to go down into the pit and you see just how difficult it is to dig the sunstone to begin with, it gives you an appreciation for the value of the sunstone, gives you an appreciation for how much hard work all of the dust devils put into mining the sunstone. You certainly can't beat the hospitality and camaraderie that happens within the dust devil community.